Have a look here at some still shots of our next guest. You know him best as Edge from WWE. Other people who know him more know him as Adam Copeland from Orangeville, Ontario. He joins us now from Asheville, North Carolina. First of all, Adam, long time no speak. Great to see you, and great to talk to you again. You're watching the Maple Leafs and the Nashville Predators right now. Put on your hockey analyst hat here. What do you see so far? Be nickel and dime Don Cherry. What do you see so far, Grapes?
Nickel and dime Don Cherry. I like it. And, yeah, it's good to see you after 20 years.
It's been a while.
How you been?
I'm doing well.
I'm wearing my Toronto St. Pat's T-shirt with holes in it that
Nice.
I always wear when I watch the Leafs. I'm scared. I'm not going to lie. It's not looking good. You know, this all started for me with the Islanders game. Mm-hmm. When Tavares went back, and that's when it feels like the wheels fell off this thing. You know, you can sit there and critique it and everything. They didn't get tough enough. They didn't get enough D. This is the thing that I think that I know a lot of people are not possibly going to agree with, and I understand that Anderson is the busiest goalie in the league, and I know he's tired, and I know all of these things, but to me, he's not a guy that wins a cup either. That's my take. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for that. And also, again, no offense to Sparks. He's a better goalie than I am. But I just don't – their goaltending isn't strong enough. The D isn't strong enough, and they're not tough enough. I wish they had picked up Simmons. I think that would have been a great pickup. I mean, in a perfect world, you get Carey Price from Montreal and you're off and running. But, yeah. So that's my take, and I'm, you know, still going to watch every game in my Holy St. Pat shirt, but I'm a little bit worried, especially with the Bruins looking like the Bruins in the first round. And then if you make it past them, you're looking at the Lightning. My gosh, like they need to change the way the playoff system is set up, I think, too. But I digress.
Well, other than the drive, Mrs. Kennedy, how did you enjoy Dallas? A scathing review of the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, courtesy.
But I love them. I love them. I'm just like every Leafs fan. I'm not satisfied unless they get 8 goals. You know.
I hear you, Jason York. Say hi to Adam.
Hey, Adam, how you doing? Actually, I used to watch all the time. I loved the Edge Spear. I was a big wrestling guy. But how did you obviously know your stuff about hockey? You just had. I thought that was a marvelous breakdown, man. Impressive. Were you? Did you grow up playing hockey? Were you a hockey guy growing up? I think you grew up in Orangeville. Like, was hockey your main sport growing up?
Hockey would have been my main sport. We couldn't afford it. You know, came from a single parent family, and you know, my mom and I. It was a struggle to keep rent, let alone buying hockey equipment, especially with the rate that I was growing. So, you know, I played for a couple of years, and I loved it. I always got thrown on D. I would have loved to have been center. Now I would have been a power forward. But, yeah, you know, it was one of those things that I realized pretty quickly wasn't going to be in the cards for me. And I think, honestly, as strange as this sounds, once I realized that, that's when the wrestling thing really took hold, because I thought, okay, I can probably afford to do that. I just need to wear spandex.
I'm always fascinated on talking to other athletes. And here's one for you. Like, when you play hockey in Canada, you go down to the rink, you sign up. Where do you go to get started in wrestling? Like,
right?
Yeah, like, yeah. Where do you go to do this kind of stuff?
Here's the surreal, crazy thing about wrestling. Everybody's road to it is different. There is not one single story that will be the same. For me, mine's even more different than the average story, in that I won a wrestling essay contest in the Toronto Star. And the prize for this essay contest was free training at Sully's gym down in Parkdale, and with Sweet Daddy Siki and Ron Hutchison. And I went down there, 17-year-old kid. You know, by that point, I was starting to grow into manhood a little bit. I was about 6'4", 220, and yeah, that was kind of that was it, you know. And then it was starve and not make any money for a few years.
And it led to an outstanding career, and it led to an outstanding, I want to get into a couple of things here, and I want to get into a couple of your matches specifically, but I want to ask you about, I went back, and because I'm a big fan of your podcast, ENC Podcast of Awesome is fantastic, and I went back this afternoon. I'm a big Jim Ross guy. I love talking to Jim Ross when I covered wrestling, learned so much from JR, and he brought up one point on your podcast I want to get you to talk about a little bit, and this is sort of trying to draw a link between pro hockey and pro wrestling here. When he talked about the locker room and how important it is to have a good locker room, and you've been and seen a lot of locker rooms. ECW had one of the more unique locker rooms we've ever seen. WCW had, a couple of guys in limousines dictating television, and the rest of the guys were out to wander in the desert. But the WWE dressing room was different. What was that like when you were wrestling? What was that locker room like?
I mean, don't get me wrong. It was a locker room full of alphas, full of sharks, and ready to, if there was chum in the water, it was going to get pounced on. But we all drove each other. At that point, I was teaming with Christian, and our goal was, Austin's in the main event against The Rock, but we want to have the match that people talk about. So we'll go out with the Hardys and the Dudleys and do TLC matches. And they would go out and steal the show in their own way, and then Undertaker would go out. And I mean, if you look at that locker room, it's pretty much it was the most stacked locker room probably in the history of that industry. I think that's safe to say, and I think that'd be a general agreement across the board. It was awesome, but it was, to make your mark there, man, you had to. We had to fall off ladders, so a lot.
It's not the easiest way to make a living, but I want to ask you a couple of questions about how you did make your living, and I want to get to one story in specific, and involves a tag team match in Germany. It's ENC versus Jeff Jarrett and the late Owen Hart. I don't want to say who told me this story because I don't want to embarrass Jim Corderas like that, but let's just say I would tell us about the foreign napkin story, if you would.
Well, Owen, to keep us all sane, Owen was a great remedy. And he knew by the end of a long tour, he could read the locker room. And a locker room needs a guy like that or a girl like that who can read it and go, okay, tonight we got to have some fun. So we were in Oberhausen, and I had no idea what Owen was doing. I just saw him reaching down into his crotch. I was like, what is happening right now? And then I saw him pull out a napkin and wrap it around his knuckles like it was supposed to be brass knuckles. And he hit me with it. So I went, all right, I'm going to go with this. I just sold that thing like I was knocked out. And then he put it in his armpit, and he did the old, Corderas checked all the different spots of where it could be. And then finally, he lifts his arm, and this napkin just comes floating down to the mat. And Oberhausen, Germany is not the most verbal crowd to begin with. That silenced anything that we had going at all. They just sat there scratching their heads.
One more, that is a fantastic. I just like the idea of you selling a napkin punch. Fantastic.
Yeah, and he went to pick me up, and I just dead sold it. So he was pulling me up and pulling me. It was ridiculous.
One of my favorite Edge moments from WWE, hair versus hair match, you and Kurt Angle. True or false, I was told that afternoon, Vince McMahon went to you and said, we're switching the finish. Angle's not getting his hair cut. You are. And you had to live with that the entire day. True or false?
True, but here's what no one knows is that I knew they weren't going to change it. I mean, Mother Nature was already taking care of Kurt's hair. So I knew that was going to be the case. I knew that Vince had invested too much into me being the long-haired, blonde guy that flips his hair all over the place. And another little-known story is I had already asked to cut my hair earlier. And they said, no, we want you to keep it. It's really part of your thing. So I knew it wasn't going anywhere. But I just went, oh, okay, and, acted like I was not affected, and everyone assumed I was. But Shane and Kurt still like to tell that story, but I knew.
weren't just being the good company boy. You knew that there's not a chance.
There's no chance. There's no chance. Plus, nobody needs to see this thing bald.
Adam, you talked about Leafs goaltending with Anderson earlier, so you obviously know your goaltenders, but we talked about this before. How did you become a fan? I heard you're a fan of Chico Rush. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
So I was a kid, right? So I based a lot of things on Chico. I was like, how do you not love a guy named Chico? I know his name's Glenn, but he's Chico. Plus, here's the thing. He looked exactly like my Uncle Randy. So for me, when I would see Randy and Chico, I'd just be like, it's all good memories. And he was on the Rockies, and then when they switched and they went to New Jersey, and that was it. Because now not only did they have Chico, but they had the coolest jerseys in the league. And for my 9-year-old brain or whatever it was, that was it. I was dyed-in-the-wool Devils fan from that day forward.
Awesome. And that used to be a great feature on New Jersey Devils television, Chico Eats, where he'd rove around the concourse eating everything, and they would highlight it every week.
How do you not love that guy?
Right? Chico's the best. No, and he's got the good duster, too. Come on, a lot of reason to love Chico.
Great duster.
As we mentioned, you're from Orangeville. That's Dale Hawerchuk country. The greatest hockey player to come out of Orangeville is clearly Dale Hawerchuk. And when I think Orangeville hockey, though, one thing that always burns in my mind, whenever I would drive from Toronto to Orangeville to see someone that you know as well, a buddy of mine that we all know, Mike Van Etten, I'd drive to Mike's place. I'd always drive through Caledon, and I would drive by, wait for it, I don't think you know this one, Yorkie.
No.
Not Tim Hortons Donuts. Eddie Shack Donuts.
Eddie Shack, baby.
Okay, I never stopped in, and every time that I went there, I'd always say, next time I'm going to go to Eddie Shack Donuts. Did you ever go to Eddie Shack Donuts, Adam?
Yes. Yes, I did. on multiple trips down for my wrestling training because it was always early, so I hit Eddie Shack's a lot, actually.
So it looks to me like it's one of those places where the room is divided into the smoking section and the secondhand smoke section. Is that true?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. We're talking like late 80s, early 90s here. So, it's a different planet at that point. But and here's another crazy story. As I remember going up to Perry Sound, and I met Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, and Eddie Shack.
What?
And yeah. It was at one of Bobby's, kind of summer camps, and I still have a picture of it.
That's or Walton Sports Camp. The Bobby or Mike Walton Sports Camp. That must have been.
So my uncle through marriage took me up there, and I saw him in the end of November, and he gave me a picture of me standing in line in front of Gordie and Bobby. No. And it's just like,
That's mint.
Insane.
That's mint.
And I think about like through all the different functions that I've done over the years, and like I actually ended up having a friendship with Ted Lindsay, and it's like that to me is just crazy. That when I would see Ted Lindsay, he'd say, "Call me Ted," and because I was always Mr. Lindsay, he's a terrible Ted, and. So I'm so thankful that over the years that the WWE and the career I had there gave me the opportunity to do things like that. There's one night we did one for the March of Dimes, and they had me up at the head table, and I'm sitting up there, and I'm with like Mark Messier and Dion Phaneuf and like all of these guys, and then there's me. And I just went like, which one of these things doesn't belong, But it's been really cool over the years, and then even just all the hockey boys that would come to the shows, because they'd know I was a Canadian kid, and we'd just sit there and start riffing on stuff.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Yorkie.
No, I just want last one for you. I know how I feel. I'm 48 now. I think you're 45. After wrestling for as long as you did, how's the body now? Like some guys are pretty beat up after that. You look pretty good. How you feeling?
You know what? I feel pretty good. Yeah, I've had 2 neck surgeries that might disagree with that, but you know what? I just keep moving. And I have a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old that give me no choice. We didn't start having kids until I retired, and then so we had my first when I was 40, and that really it keeps me chasing. So the rust doesn't get into the hinges. I guess I just I stay lubed and. Walk my dogs, I mountain bike, I still work out every day, and that's what I found. As long as I keep keep the body moving. Motion is lotion.
And you live in a beautiful part of America. We're going to turn the recreation over now for a final question, Adam, to Steve Dangle, who handles all of our social media, and he has a hockey video game question for you, Steve.
Yes. Hi, Edge. Sorry, 14-year-old me is geeking out real hard right now. We got a question from Twitter from a band called the Born Ruffians, and they wanted to know, are you going to grant Christian an NHL 95 rematch? Now, guys, they say there's no more fighting in hockey. Back in 1995, there used to be fighting in hockey video games.
Yes.
Ed, what happened there?
So now I was going to Humber College for television and radio broadcasting. And Jay, Christian, he was going for, like, I don't know, social sciences or one of those degrees that doesn't do anything. And we all lived together in this one townhouse, and we would have these tournaments. We were party animals, so we would play NHL 95 on the weekends. And Jay was so obnoxious, and he would take the Ottawa Senators, ranked the worst that season. I think they were like a 69 or something. But he would beat pretty much everybody except for me. And we were kind of like 50-50 back and forth. One night he beat me, and he just kept riding it. And finally we got into it, and we started fighting, and we fought over this little billiards table that we had, broke furniture all over the place. We got split up. He takes off out of the house and storms out and then I, in my Volkswagen, 87 Volkswagen diesel Jetta, go around the corner. I'm like, come on, get in the car. I got the window rolled down. It's the middle of the winter. I was like, get in the car. And then we played our buddy Xavier Woods from WWE. He has this show called Up, Up, Down, Down, and it's a video game show. He had us on there. He said, I got to do the rematch. I was like, this didn't end well last time, so let's preface this. And I smoked him. So I don't really need to give him a rematch, but I will anyway. I'll take sympathy.
We'll call this the Tables, Ladders, Chairs, and NHL 95 match. Adam, you've been a delight. It's been great catching up again. Best of luck to the rest of the way. And best of luck, not just being a podcaster now, but best of luck being dad. I know you enjoy it. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
We'll catch up down the road.
Thanks, Adam.
Goalies go.
There you go.